The year is 1885. The vast, sun-baked plains of the American frontier stretched endlessly, a land of both breathtaking beauty and brutal hardship. In a secluded valley, miles from the nearest dusty outpost of Harmony Creek, lay the humble farm of Eleanor Vance. At 35, Eleanor carried the quiet strength of a woman forged by solitude. Her days were a solitary rhythm, tending a small, struggling herd, coaxing a meager harvest from the unyielding soil, and maintaining the sturdy but weathered cabin her late husband Josiah had built. Josiah's untimely death 2 years prior had left Eleanor alone, facing the wilderness with only her loyal, grizzled shepherd dog, Old Man, and a deep, guarded silence for company. Yet beneath her quiet demeanor lay a core of unbreakable resilience, a spirit tempered by loss. One sweltering afternoon, as the air hung heavy and still, the pervasive quiet of the valley was shattered by the thunder of approaching hooves. A notorious gang of outlaws, the Desert Jackals, led by the infamous Jedediah Jackal Blackwood, descended upon her isolated homestead. Blackwood, a man with a reputation for cold, calculating ruthlessness and a cruel, unsettling smile, was known for preying on the weak, leaving nothing but ruin in his wake. Eleanor, alerted by Old Man's frantic barking, rushed out, her heart a drum against her ribs. She saw the dust cloud, then the grim faces of the outlaws, their pistols drawn. Blackwood, dismounting with a swagger, his eyes raking over the modest farm, expected an easy target. A lone woman, surely terrified and helpless. He approached with menacing slowness, his voice a low growl. "Looks like luck's on our side today, widow. You've got supplies and we need 'em." Before Eleanor could react, his men swarmed, quickly overpowering her. She fought with desperate ferocity, but she was just one against many. They struck her, sending her sprawling, the rough earth scraping her cheek. As they ransacked her cabin, destroying what they didn't take, they bound her hands and feet with coarse rope, tying her to a sturdy porch pillar. Her farm, her sanctuary, was being desecrated before her eyes. Blackwood, leaning close, his breath foul, sneered, "Consider yourself lucky you're still breathing, old woman. Tell anyone and we'll be back for what's left." Then, with a chilling laugh, they mounted their horses, riding off with her meager food stores, her precious silver locket, her only keepsake of Josiah, and her beloved Old Man, leaving her, helpless, tied, and surrounded by the wreckage of her life, the dust of their departure settling like a shroud over her despair. The immediate aftermath of the robbery was a crushing weight of despair. Eleanor lay there, tied, the ropes biting. Into her wrists, the scent of dust and her ruined home filling her senses. The sun beat down, relentlessly baking the exposed skin on her face. Her mind raced, replaying the terror, the helplessness, the image of Old Man being dragged away. Tears of rage and sorrow streamed down her face, mixing with the dust. It wasn't just the stolen supplies or the locket. It was the violation, the utter powerlessness she felt. She thought of Josiah, how he would have protected her, and a fresh wave of grief washed over her. For a terrifying moment, the thought of simply giving up flickered in her mind, letting the sun take her. But then a raw, burning ember ignited deep within her. It was a cold, hard resolve born from fury and an almost primal urge for justice. They had underestimated her. They had left her to die, thinking she was broken. But they had not broken her spirit. They had forged it anew in the crucible of despair. She thought of Old Man, his loyal, trusting eyes. She thought of Josiah, who had taught her to be strong, to be resourceful. And she thought of the shame of letting these men get away with it. Her immediate obstacle, the ropes. They were tight, expertly tied. She began to twist, to strain, using every ounce of strength. The coarse fibers chafed her skin, but she pushed through the pain. Remembering a trick Josiah once showed her about using leverage against a tight knot, she pressed her wrist against the rough-hewn wood of the pillar, trying to create a tiny bit of slack. It was slow, agonizing work, her muscles screaming in protest. Hours later, as the sun began its descent, painting the sky in fiery hues, she felt a minuscule give. With one final desperate surge of adrenaline, the knot loosened, and her hands, raw and bleeding, were free, but still vulnerable. They had taken her horse, her rifle, almost everything. Her plan began to form, not a desperate flight, but a calculated counterattack. Blackwood's words echoed in her mind, "Tell anyone, and we'll be back." They believed she was too afraid, too weak. This was her advantage. They would not expect her to follow. She remembered Josiah's other teachings, the ones he'd always told her were just for fun, the intricate, almost ingenious traps he loved to build for small game, designed for efficiency and surprise. She had watched him, fascinated, never thinking she'd need such knowledge. Now, it was her only hope. The widow's web was about to be spun. The sun rose, revealing the full extent of the devastation on Eleanor's farm. The cabin was ransacked, empty shelves, broken pottery, the lingering scent of stale cigar smoke left by the outlaws. The silence was deafening, save for the buzz of flies. But Eleanor was no longer paralyzed by despair. She was a woman transformed, fueled by a singular burning purpose. Retrieve old man, retrieve her locket, and make Blackwood pay. Her first task was to secure what little remained. She scoured the devastated farm, finding a small hidden cache of dried meat and a dented canteen she'd forgotten in a forgotten corner. More importantly, she found a worn, rusty pickaxe and a coil of sturdy rope in the old tool shed the outlaws had dismissed as worthless. These humble items would become her instruments of vengeance. She knew pursuit was impossible on foot, and finding a horse would take too long, risking Blackwood's escape. Her strength was her mind and her knowledge of the land. She began tracking the outlaws, not with speed, but with meticulous patience. Josiah had taught her to read the subtle language of the frontier. A broken twig, a scuff mark in the dust, a discarded cigarette butt. She learned their habits from the debris they left behind, their carelessness, their predictable routes, their preferred campsites. The trail led her deeper into the desolate, unforgiving Badlands, a labyrinth of twisted rock formations and arid washes. The heat was relentless, the sun a burning eye in the sky. Nights were cold, forcing her to shiver, wrapped only in a thin blanket she salvaged. Hunger gnawed at her, and water was a constant, desperate search. Along the way, she was nearly discovered. Twice. Once, a lone prospector, hardened and suspicious, spotted her tracks. Eleanor, sensing him, moved swiftly to a high, secluded ridge, observing him until he passed. Another time, she narrowly avoided a band of territorial Native American hunters hiding among the rocks, her heart pounding, until they moved on. These encounters reinforced the profound isolation and danger of her quest, reminding her that trust was a luxury she couldn't afford. She was a ghost in the desert, a silent shadow relentlessly pursuing her prey. Her mind, sharp and focused, meticulously planned her next move, envisioning the web she would weave for her enemies. She knew their destination, the notorious town of Serpent's Rest, a lawless haven rumored to be Blackwood's preferred hideout. It was there, among the shadows and the lawless, that she would set her trap. Serpent's Rest lived up to its name. It was a town of crumbling facades, dusty streets, and a palpable air of lawlessness, clinging to the edge of civilization. Saloons blared raucous music, crude gambling dens lined the main street, and every shadow seemed to conceal a hardened face. It was a haven for outlaws, and Eleanor knew it was where Blackwood would eventually make camp. She arrived under the cover of dusk, a lone, unremarkable figure melting into the shadows, her tattered clothes and dust-streaked face making her blend in with the town's downtrodden. She wore an old, faded bonnet pulled low, obscuring her features, careful not to draw attention. Her first priority was reconnaissance. She spent 2 days observing, learning the routines of the Viper Gang, who were camped on the outskirts of town, their horses tethered in a makeshift corral. She saw Old Man tied near the outlaws' camp, looking weary but alive, and she saw her locket hanging from Blackwood's saddle, a cruel trophy. She also noticed the town's most distinguishing feature, a massive, unstable rock formation towering over a critical supply road leading into and out of Serpent's Rest, a natural choke point, perfect for what she had in mind. Her plan began to take shape, an audacious scheme that leveraged the outlaws' own carelessness and the treacherous environment. She started by subtly sabotaging the gang's horse tack, loosening straps on saddles, filing down stirrup leathers, small, undetectable acts that would lead to disaster when they least expected it. She knew they were planning to move out in a few days after replenishing supplies. This was her window. The night before their planned departure, under the cloak of deepest darkness, Eleanor worked tirelessly and silently. She found a strategic position high above the supply road, near the unstable rock formation. Using her pickaxe and the sturdy rope, she began the painstaking, dangerous work of preparing her trap. She targeted a critical support point of the massive rock, weakening it, setting up a trigger mechanism that would cause a rock slide. It was a testament to Josiah's teachings on creating efficient, devastating traps, scaled up for a much larger, more dangerous prey. She worked until her hands bled and her muscles screamed, but the image of Ethan's terrified face spurred her on. As dawn approached, a faint light beginning to paint the sky, the Viper Gang began to stir, preparing for departure. Blackwood, mounted and arrogant, led the way onto the narrow supply road below the rock formation. As the entire gang rode directly into her kill zone, Eleanor, her heart pounding, pulled the trigger. With a deafening roar, tons of rock and earth cascaded down, blocking the road, trapping the gang. Horses reared, men screamed in terror and confusion, thrown from their saddles as the ground shook. The chaos was absolute. Blackwood, stunned and trapped, realized too late the silent, unseen hand that had sprung the trap. Eleanor, a ghost in the dawn light, watched from above, her eyes burning with a cold, triumphant fire. This was not merely revenge, this was justice, served on her terms. The dust from the rock slide settled slowly, revealing a scene of utter chaos and widespread destruction. The Viper Gang, caught completely off guard, was in disarray. Horses lay tangled, men scrambled from beneath fallen rocks, many injured, some trapped. Jedediah Jackal Blackwood himself was pinned beneath a fallen tree, his leg twisted at an unnatural angle, his face a mask of pain and disbelief. The air was thick with the groans of the injured, the terrified whinnies of horses, and the acrid smell of dust and fear. Eleanor descended from her vantage point, moving with a quiet authority through the chaos. She didn't wield a weapon, she carried the weight of justice in her stride. She approached the trapped Blackwood, her eyes cold and unwavering. "You underestimated me, Jackal," she said, her voice low and steady. "You stole my peace, my locket, and my dog. You left me for dead." Blackwood, struggling against his binds, snarled, "You'll pay for this, woman, my men." But his men were no longer a threat. Injured, demoralized, and utterly broken by the unexpected ambush, they were easily rounded up by a small, unexpected posse of local ranchers and Sheriff Brody, who had been drawn to the commotion. News of the ambush had reached Harmony Creek, and these brave men, knowing the Viper Gang's brutality, had ridden out, expecting to find Eleanor's body. Instead, they found her triumphant, standing over the shattered remnants of the notorious gang. Amidst the chaos, Eleanor's eyes fell upon Old Man, tied to a surviving horse, looking weary but alive. With a choked cry, she rushed to him, burying her face in his fur, tears finally mingling with the grime on her cheeks, and there, dangling from Blackwood's saddle, was her silver locket, now reclaimed. The arrival of Sheriff Brody and the local ranchers solidified the victory. Blackwood and his remaining men were rounded up, their criminal reign unequivocally over. The county, once terrorized by the Viper Gang, could finally breathe again. Eleanor Vance, the quiet widow, was no longer just a survivor. She was a legend. Her story spread like wildfire, capturing the imagination of the frontier. She wasn't just brave, she was ingeniously resourceful, a woman who had turned her helplessness into a weapon. Eleanor chose to stay in her valley, slowly rebuilding her farm, a symbol of resilience. The sheriff, recognizing her unparalleled knowledge of the land and her strategic mind, frequently sought her counsel on matters of regional security and defense against other lingering threats. Eleanor, with her quiet strength and newfound respect, helped establish a local watch committee, training local farmers and homesteaders in basic defensive tactics and setting up early warning systems. Her farm, though forever marked by the raid, became a beacon of safety and community strength, and the story of the widow's web became a cornerstone of frontier folklore, a powerful reminder that even in the face of overwhelming odds, the human spirit, especially a mother's, can turn the tables with ingenuity, courage, and an unyielding will to fight for what is hers.